So, how much rain can a one-eyed koala bear? I got no idea, but I'll let you know when he's saturated enough he falls out of the tree. Such a hard life. Anyway, while it's a bit too wet for me to do anything real useful, I got time to make a video I've been promising for a while now. Mainly due to the constant flow of YouTube messages, emails, PMs, and even just comments left on my videos, I've decided to just make a quick video explaining the cooling system on my Subaru powered Volkswagen Super Beetle, because they're always the same questions. Where's your radiator? What's your radiator? How's it mounted? Where are your coolant lines? All that sort of thing. So rather than just keep answering the same questions and emailing photos and such, figure this I can make a video and send people to it instead. This will also just help dispel some myths. A lot of people just don't seem to believe it's possible for a cooling system that's got 8 metres of pipe work, holds 3 times the original coolant capacity, and has a radiator only half the size of the original Subaru one, that it will behave exactly the same as it did in the original Subaru vehicle. Okay, just quickly for those that don't know already, the car's a 1974 Super Beetle, and the engine conversion's been in and running for almost 3 years now. It was EJ22 powered for the first couple of years, and for about the last 6 months has been the new EJ25 engine. Now, I had a number of requirements I wanted to meet when I started this conversion. The first one was I didn't want anything visibly standing out that the car had an engine conversion. Up until I changed my rear valance around recently, the only obvious difference is the radiator intake down there. Because this was an Australian built Superbug, the front apron didn't have the usual air conditioning grill like the American ones do. So I did have to cut an opening in, which I've just put expanded mesh in. When I repaint this car, I'm going to fit a American valance on the front. So that's the only visual difference at the front. Nothing's any different at the rear. Especially with my old exhaust, which had the standard apron. When I fitted the radiator, I did not want to be hacking my car to bits. I wanted to be able to easily turn it back to original if I ever needed to. So what I've removed from the spare wheel well for the radiator has just been cut out in one piece. So that piece can be very easily welded back in probably under an hour. Now, I also didn't want to sacrifice too much boot or trunk space in the front. Volkswagen Beetles are not exactly roomy or have lots of luggage space at the best of times, and I still use this car very regularly, so I didn't want to lose too much space. So a low profile radiator setup meant my trunk space is pretty much the same as original. Also, using it regularly, I wanted to also carry a spare tyre, which is often quite difficult when you've got a radiator taking up the space where the spare wheel normally goes. My trunk space is pretty much standard Super Beetle until I installed my air conditioning, but even that doesn't take up too much room. The cooling system on it had to be able to cope with extreme heat, temperatures of low to mid 40s or 105 to 110 Fahrenheit are perfectly normal summertime temperatures in this part of Australia. So it had to be able to stay perfectly cool in those sort of conditions. And I guess to expand on that a bit also, I had planned further down the track to add air conditioning, which I did over a year ago now. So it had to be able to handle the added heat load of that as well. The hottest temperatures it's seen so far has been 44 degrees Celsius, and even with the air conditioning on, cruising on the motorway at 110 kilometres an hour, temperatures have never gotten over 100 degrees Celsius. The best advice I can give to anyone who's contemplating a conversion is keep the cooling system as close to standard Subaru as possible. You don't want to create a system that's prone to airlocks, because the one weakness with these motors is head gaskets, and airlocks are really easy to kill them with. So I've left all the cooling system is exactly the same as in the standard Subaru. The only mod I've done is I had to cut the water manifold at the top pipe here a little bit shorter, just to stop the hose interfering with the body. Now the standard Subaru heater inlet and outlet pipes, which are buried way down the back there, just have a piece of heater hose linking them. I do have a heater core, but I've just never connected it. It just doesn't get cold enough around this part of Oz, and I feel the heat, not the cold, hence that thing. So the heater loop is very important on these cars, as that's the bypass for the thermostat as well. So Subarus have one little quirk that a lot of people are not used to, and that's to do with the thermostat. It's common in Japanese cars. Mazda have been doing it for years. My green Goober's the same way, and so's Dad's 929. Normally an engine would have the thermostat blocking the flow out of the engine so it doesn't go into the radiator. As it heats up, it starts letting the water through the radiator, and happy days. What Subaru and Mazda and various other manufacturers are starting to do now is the thermostat is on the cold side, the return from the radiator instead. Now this is big and scary and upsets a lot of people. If you get it set up right, it works brilliantly. The cooling system in this takes under 5 minutes to heat up from stone cold and stays dead stable. And that's the reason they did that system. Instead of just blocking the flow to the radiator, it just lets the engine sip away the supply from the radiator instead. But it uses the heater loop to control the thermostat, which is why that's important. Now, obviously with the radiator in the front and the engine at the back, you need bleed points, air bleed points and fill points. A lot of different ways to do that. Many people will tee some sort of header tank into the heater lines. That can work well. I took a different approach and had an inline header tank. I'll pop my overflow out so I can see it a bit better. So the original Subaru outlet to the radiator comes out. Would normally go straight into the radiator in a Subaru. With mine, it goes into my header tank, which I had custom made. You see there's the radiator cap for pressure relief, overflow into the catch bottle there. And behind that pretty blue bracket is the line that goes all the way up the front of the radiator. A number of reasons I went this way. Nice big hoses like that instead of small little heater hoses means air and coolant move around a lot faster. It's also the highest part of the system, so I have no dramas at all filling this system with coolant. It's basically a fill and drive. Many people have to do stupid things like squeeze hoses, jack the front up, blah blah blah, to try and get the airlocks out. The cap being there on the top too makes it nice and accessible for filling the coolant up. So the line up to the front out of the radiator comes out of that, straight down beside the gearbox through there. One of the keys to making this a simple fill and go system is there's no high spots in the lines. Once it gets down to there, it runs at the same height all the way to the front. And there's another condition I wanted to meet. I didn't want to lose any ground clearance because this car's lowered and I drive on some shitty roads. So they stuck right up in the floor pan bolt channel there. Now the coolant lines are 1.5" stainless steel, which is a contentious issue. Now everyone will tell you stainless steel is the worst, or one of the worst materials to use for cooling systems, especially with a aluminium engine. I've been disproving that one for years now. I went the stainless steel for a number of reasons. It actually turned out to be the cheapest material I could use. I got it through a plumbing shop at $15 a metre. Anyway, $5 a foot for exhaust pipe worked out to be almost the same cost, and I've got the facilities to weld stainless pipe up. It's very tough. I have bottomed out those on a number of occasions. It doesn't even scratch, and it will probably outlast this car. Now, I didn't want any ugly radiator intakes or give away that the car's got an engine conversion in it, so I have a very small radiator intake. If I had an American Valance, I wouldn't have had to touch anything, but being Australian built, this one had the solid Valance or apron on the front, so I did have to cut the inlet into it. And I've just got ordinary mesh in there, colour coded so it doesn't stick out too much. Even in the boot or trunk, nothing stands out terribly. The box on top of the fuel tank is my air conditioning. Unfortunately, curved windscreen Super Beetles have them in the trunk. But that there is pretty much where the floor is in a standard Super Beetle. For anyone who hasn't seen under a standard Super Beetle hood, they look like this. So still plenty of room to store all my crap in there, including a spare tyre. And the radiator lurks underneath the false floor. Now my enclosure is made out of waterproof plywood, which may seem ghetto. I had all intentions of making a fiberglass one up out of it, but the plywood has a couple of advantages over, say, steel or aluminium, in that it does not conduct heat. last thing you want is to be heating up the inside of your boot, especially when you've got air conditioning in it, or a flat screen Beetle where half that heat makes it through all the gaps in the dashboard. So we've got it all sealed up, no heat gets into the trunk, and where it's cut out at the bottom, plenty of room for the air to escape. Air comes in through there obviously. Now this would be my air conditioning condenser and fan at the front here. Radiator is at the back with two small thermo fans on. Now, radiator size is an interesting topic. This radiator is out of an Alfa Romeo 33. Here's one I prepared earlier. Actually, this is just my first radiator. I bought this one used off an Alpha Specialist. It's an original Italian. Can't quite make out the date stamp there, but it's 1987 from a Series 2 33. And it was all fully reconditioned, brass tank, copper core, but the problem with it was sitting dry on the bench for all these years. The O-rings that seal the tanks to the core had perished and dried out, so it began leaking. But they work well for conversions. I know of a few other Beetles that are running 2-litre turbo Subaru motors with this same radiator. They're just so compact. They're only a bit over 10 inches or 260mm high, and 25 inches or 650mm wide. So nice and compact, but adequate enough to keep even a 2.5 litre Subaru cool. So just got two 9-inch thermo fans on it. It is double row. And one other important thing, no filler cap or pressure cap obviously, but it does have a bleed point. Now in the Subaru it would, in the Alpha rather, it would run up to the header tank, but because it's in the front and my header tank's in the rear, all I've got is a length of hose on there, which when I'm filling it up, I just pin up nice and high on the hood here with the end open, so any air in the top of the radiator can bleed out once the system's full. Just got it blocked off with a bolt and tied out of the way. So the radiator's just mounted to a frame bolted to the Napoleon's hat down there. Top just bolts to the body. So I went with 1.5" or 38mm coolant lines and hoses all the way. That's the standard Subaru size. Now I could have run right down to about 1 inch coolant line, which would have cut my coolant quantity right back. The radiator and engine itself actually hold minimal coolant. The vast majority of the 15 litres in this system is in the lines front to back. But what I've found by having that much coolant, it gives you a lot more reserve there. The cooling fans in these never turn on unless I've been stopped for at least 5 minutes, just because it has such a large amount of coolant reserve there. Well, thanks to this stupid rain, it's not real warm today. The current ambient temperature on top of my wheelie bin is 18.4 Celsius or 65.1 Fahrenheit. Cold enough that it's fogging up the inside of my camera lens anyway. But that's a good opportunity just to show how quickly this thing warms up from cold. It's stone cold at the moment. The Hasn't been started for 2 days, and the coolant temperature is a little bit warmer than ambient because it's been sitting in the nice warm shed here. Yeah, it's about 21 degrees Celsius. So, just watch how quickly it heats up. It'd be great if I had a heater and actually needed it, because it'd be up to temperature in only a couple of minutes. It's usually up to temperature by the time the first song ends. These friggin' modern stereos are so hard to use. Can't be simple. I don't know why. Yep, stone cold. And need a timer on that. 12 seconds. Not quite starting to move yet. But yeah, it's usually by the time first song finishes and I get to the end of the road, it's up to temperature. It tends to run about 82, 85 degrees. Just hit 50. Minute 30. Just hit 60 Celsius. Now it's 70. Not much out here unless you like macadamias. About the only thing grown out here anymore. Used to be all sugar cane here once upon a time. Now it's 75. 2.5 minutes. We do have a few cows. Coming up to the end of my road now. And almost there. 3 minutes. Close enough to 80 degrees, you can call that up to temperature. And there you have it. There's how quickly it gets up to temperature. 3 and a bit minutes. You can call that 80 degrees. That's where it tends to sit. And just quickly at the other end of the scale, how quickly it cools down. I'm waiting for the fans to cut in. They're very, very close to cutting in. It's usually about 96. Yeah, my thing's just starting to flush. It does that at the same temp the fan's cutting, so I haven't... oh yeah, there go the fans now. My battery's been disconnected. I need to change the temperature on that. They're high-speed curved blade fans, so they're a little bit on the noisy side. But it's a bloody hot day today. It's currently about 28 or 29 degrees, and it's been puttering around town with the air conditioning going. I guess one thing I forgot to mention with the stainless steel lines running underneath in the road draft, they catch a lot of the wind, so it acts as more secondary cooling. Anyway, that should be starting to cool down now. Yeah, it's dropped a couple of degrees. Because the radiator's so far away from the engine, the coolant actually goes up before it comes down, just while it circulates. See that thing stop flashing and carrying on now. Anyway, on a stinking hot day like this, I've had the air conditioning on. It tends to bring it down in about 1.5 to 2 minutes, so won't be far off cutting out now. See, just slowly starting to drop. My gauge reads a little bit high, but that's better than low. Alright, I'll just cut out then. So, this is going to make for one friggin' long video, but oh well, not to worry. So there's how the cooling system in this thing all works.